Chapter 7. Ino gave a sardonic smile to Sakura, who was standing on the other end of their makeshift arena, in the middle of a playground. "Ready, Sakura?" she asked sweetly. "Of course," Sakura replied, setting Waterlily down and pulling a Pokéball from her belt. "Is one-on-one good for you?" "Just fine," Ino said, reaching for one of her own. For a moment, she thought of sending out her Reselia, but then she stopped, deciding to save her strongest for another battle. Besides, Sakura wasn't using her Azurill, so why use a grass type? "Odette, go." "I choose you, Jane." The Ducklet and Mankey appeared with a flash. Upon seeing Sakura's Pokémon, Ino raised an eyebrow. "You caught a Mankey?" The pink-haired girl smiled at the blonde's surprise. "Scared?" "Not really scared," Ino explained. "Usually, you're pretty smart. Even I'll admit that you've got a good head on your shoulders. You scored higher than me on all our written tests in trainer's school. So, understand that I mean it when I say that I'm disappointed that someone as brainy as you would use such a brawny, unfeminine, fighting type. Especially against a flying Pokémon. Then again, I suppose you'd catch anything after finding out how many Pokémon I've got." "Be quiet, you pig," Sakura snapped. "What gives you the right to insult my Pokémon?" "Key," Jane shouted, stomping her feet and beating her chest. Ino almost smiled at Sakura's protectiveness of her Pokémon. "I'm just saying that you shouldn't just catch Pokémon so you could compete with me. That would be a selfish thing to do to your Pokémon." Sakura cringed slightly at this. Didn't she just catch Jane to play catch-up with Ino? "Mankey Keyman!" Jane suddenly shouted, pointing a paw at the blonde girl. Ino couldn't understand the words, but it was clear that the Pokémon was telling her off. And from the way Odette had flinched, there was a lot of Poké profanity in it as well. Sakura smiled slightly. "Well," Ino admitted, looking at the pig monkey, "your Pokémon thinks I'm full of it, so she must like you. I guess you just caught a brawny, unfeminine Pokémon because you wanted to. Good for you." "Thanks," Sakura replied flatly. "Now are we going to battle or what?" "After you," Ino said gracefully. Smiling, Sakura complied. "Jane, scratch. Fly up and use water gun, Odette," Ino ordered. 00000. Sasuke lied on the bed, staring up at the ceiling. It had been almost an hour since Naruto had left, and he had heard nothing from the nurse about Naruto and his Pokémon. I wonder what everyone is doing?" he asked aloud. After a few minutes of silence, the boy sighed and leaned up. "No point in just sitting here," he said, standing up and making his way for the door. "Might as well check up on my Pokémon, and make sure that nutcase nurse wasn't smothering Bayoshi to death." He made his way to the front, only to find no one there. "Hello?" Sasuke called, looking around. "I want to check up on my Pokémon." No one answered. After waiting for a few moments, Sasuke just rolled his eyes. The nurse and doctor must be working together in the back, he thought, waking past the reception area and going through the doors the nurse went earlier. He found himself walking down a hallway that gave off the odor that doctors' offices smelled of, scanning the rooms as he passed. He still didn't see anyone. After rounding a corner, Sasuke spotted a Meowth playing with, or more appropriately, trying to kill, a small Rattata doll. "You must belong to that idiot nurse," Sasuke said, leaning down on one knee. The Meowth looked up at Sasuke and meowed, rolling around onto its back. "You don't even mind me calling her an idiot, do you?" Sasuke asked smugly, rubbing the Pokémon's belly. The Meowth just purred gently. "So, where is your owner?" As if to answer him, a woman's voice suddenly pierced the air. "Shut up, you little drip." Caught off guard, Sasuke jumped up, looking left and right. He didn't see anyone. "Be quiet," a male's voice responded sharply, "you know our orders." His voice was coming from around the corner. Sasuke realized that he was not the one being spoken to, and exhaled the breath he had been holding without realizing it. Then he realized that maybe he shouldn't be here, and dove into the nearest empty room. Leaving the door a crack open so he could peek, Sasuke watched as the two figures came around the corner. "Don't snap at me," the woman growled. Sasuke was sure it was the receptionist from earlier, but she had none of the airheadedness about her as before. Now, she had a harsh and cruel look on her face. "I'll speak to you as I wish, Samantha," the man next to her replied. He had a doctor's coat on. "And you're not going to keep it, that's final." "Since when do I need your permission to do anything, Roger?" she hissed. Since we're under orders to give every Pokemon we steal to HQ, Roger responded. He moved a picture on the wall to the side and pressed button underneath it. The wall slid open to reveal a secret passageway. Sasuke's blood chilled as he heard the cries of Naruto's Furret and his Eevee from inside the secret room. Be quiet. The fake doctor shouted. They're not going to miss one little Eevee, Samantha protested, continuing their discussion. Come on, let me have the little cutie. No, Roger hissed, whipping around and facing his partner. Do you have any idea what happens to people who took something from Team Snake? The woman shook her head. Meanwhile, Sasuke nearly gagged. Team Snake was an infamous crime family that stole Pokemon and conducted illegal experiments on them. His father had spent most of his career trying to dismantle Team Snake, and often voiced his hatred for them when at home. Well, Roger said slowly, using his hand to pantomime a snake crawling up her neck, let's just say that everyone who's ever tried to betray the snakes have been found dead with their families. His hand mimicked a snake biting into her neck with about a gallon of Arbok venom in their blood. Samantha flinched, rubbing her neck. So don't get any ideas, Roger concluded, turning and walking into the room. Now, let's get back to work. Sasuke snuck out of his hiding place and made his way to the doorway the two had entered as quickly and quietly as he could. Peering around, he could see what they were doing. Bayoshi and Puck were strapped down to an examination table, struggling desperately to get loose. The woman called Samantha was glaring at them, telling them to shut up and be still. Meanwhile, the fake doctor was loading a vial filled with a strange, glowing liquid into an injection gun. Realization struck Sasuke, they were going to inject a TM into the Pokemon. TMs, short for technical machines, were drugs engineered to make a Pokemon learn moves they couldn't otherwise. Once the TM was injected, the Pokemon's DNA would forcibly change to add the attack to their very physiology. Any new organs they needed to use the attack, such as a thunder pouch in their body to generate electrical energy for electric moves, would grow in their body as well. The changes could take anywhere from 1 to 3 days to complete, depending on how compatible the Pokemon was with the attack. And the whole process could be very painful for the Pokemon. So much so that trainers were forbidden from using them themselves. By law, a trainer would have to go to a medical facility and have a trained professional administer it. That way, the Pokemon could be in a safe environment where it can be given the care needed to complete the transformation safely. Sasuke didn't know what those Team Snake thugs were planning to put into Bayoshi or Puck, but they'd have to step over his cold, dead body to do it. Reaching for a Pokeball from his belt, Sasuke ground his teeth when he remembered that he gave them all to Nurse Ratchet earlier. Growling, Sasuke wondered what to do. Without any Pokemon, all he could do was charge in, guns blazing and fists swinging. That didn't seem too good an option. Uncle Minato might have taught him basic hand-to-hand, but Sasuke didn't think he could take two full-grown adults that had Pokemon at their disposal. What could he? Meowth? Ah, Sasuke shouted out, unable to help himself. He had completely forgotten about the Meowth at his feet, and it had reached up and gripped him with its claws to get his attention. Who's there? Samantha demanded, looking toward the door. What's wrong? Roger asked, pausing just as he was about to inject the TM into the Furret. Shh! The woman hissed, walking over to the doorway. Swearing under his breath, Sasuke started thinking fast. He couldn't let himself be caught. Looking around, he didn't see anything that could be used as a weapon. Only the Meowth, who was still clawing him for attention. Sasuke mused thoughtfully, picking it up. Who's there? Samantha shrieked again. Just as she was about to get to the doorway, Sasuke jumped out of hiding, holding up the Meowth. What the? Get the Houndoom away from my Eevee, Sasuke shouted, chucking the cat Pokemon at the nurse. The woman screamed as the Meowth latched onto her face, hissing and scratching up a storm. Get the $% off me, stupid cat. The man ran over as fast as he could, not sure if he should grab the kid or help his partner. Unfortunately for him, Sasuke took advantage of this hesitation and delivered a swift kick to his nether regions, following up with a straight punch to the man's eye when he inevitably fell to his knees in pain. Jumping over the man's crumbled form, Sasuke ran over to the examination table and started undoing the straps holding Bayoshi and Puck down. VV. Bayoshi cheered when he was set free, jumping onto Sasuke's shoulder. Don't worry, Sasuke shouted, moving over to Puck, I'll get you out of here quick. The man had gotten up and bolted over for Sasuke. You miserable. Bam. Bayoshi hit him in stomach with a solid tackle, winding the fake doctor. A second tackle sent him sprawling. Sasuke undid the strap, scooped the forehead in his EV up, and ran for the door. As he jumped over the crooks, he felt something snag his foot, causing him to stop and head for the floor. Bayoshi and Puck cried out, jumping off of him as he hit the ground. Looking back, Sasuke saw the fake doctor, smiling at him victoriously, his eye black and swollen. Roger smiled, heaving. "You're not going anywhere, you little..." Crack. Sasuke smashed his foot into the man's face as hard as he could, earning the satisfying sound of his nose breaking. His grip loosened, allowing Sasuke to scramble up and bolt for the door. He rounded the corner and made his way for the front. Bayoshi and Puck were way ahead of him, almost out of the center. Something light and fuzzy jumped onto Sasuke's back. Before he could react, he heard the woman shout, "Pachirisu, use spark and fry that brat." Electricity discharged through his body, causing Sasuke unbearable pain. His vision went white and he fell onto the ground, body shaking. Somewhere in the distance, Sasuke could hear Bayoshi and Puck crying out for him. "Keep going." He managed to shout out, "Go find Naruto and Sakura." The dread apparent on their faces, the two Pokemon gave him one last pained look before rushing out the center's doors. Sasuke was about to smile triumphantly before he saw the Team Snake woman's foot come at his head. 0000. Kiba and Hinata walked together, Akamaru in front of them. There was a feeling of awkwardness in the air. It was clear that both of them weren't sure what to do. "So," the boy began, "what about you?" She thought for a moment. What would be good to talk about? Her family, maybe? "Well, I started my Pokemon journey just last week. At home, there's my father and little sister. Her name's Hanabi. She and I get along pretty well, but she's younger than me, so it's hard for us to have the same interests." "So, you got a father and sister, any other relatives?" There's my cousin, Neji. He's a year older, so he's on his journey, though father does stay in contact with him." "What about your mother?" Kiba asked, turning. Hinata looked down solemnly, her pace slowing. She's passed on." "Oh, I'm sorry," Kiba said awkwardly, looking away and slapping his hand to his head. Way to kill the conversation, he thought bitterly. "Well, he stammered, trying to think of something. Well, I've got a mom and sister. My sis, is all grown and works as a Pokemon nurse. And my ma is a Pokemon breeder." "Your father's passed on too?" Hinata asked gently. "Nah," Kiba said, almost grinning, "he disappeared. Sis says ma scared him away." "Your mother scared your father away?" Hinata asked, dumbfounded. "Ma's a..." Kiba searched for the right word. Intimidating? Frightening? Beastly? Demon-possessed? Satanic? Scary woman, he finally concluded, not wanting to make the conversation any more awkward than it already was. "I see," Hinata responded, her voice only a little bewildered. She paused for a moment. "So, you really like Pokemon?" "Yeah." Kiba near shouted, glad for the change in subject. "My family breeds all the canine Pokemon species, like the Lillipup, Electrike, and Snubbull families, to name a few." "Do you plan on raising a team of canine Pokemon only?" Hinata asked. Kiba mused, scratching his chin, "Not really. I mean, all my favorites are canine-like, and I plan on having mostly canine-like Pokemon, but I'll raise any Pokemon I like." "What about you?" Kiba asked, giving Hinata a sideways glance. "What kind of Pokemon are you raising?" "Well, I started out with a Totodile I named Rhapsody, and I've caught a Caterpie I've named Waltz," Hinata said, wondering if she should call them out. "But, I don't really know if I'll even try to catch a particular kind of Pokemon or just raise what I catch." "Nothing wrong with that," Kiba responded, smiling. "So, what are your favorites anyway?" Hinata thought for a moment. "Well, my family likes to raise fighting types and Pokemon that are considered elegant and distinguished. It's part of the tradition of our dojo. My father's favorite Pokemon is his Minxiao." "That's nice, but do you like it?" Kiba pointed out. Hinata looked at him with wide eyes. "Of course I do. He's a wonderful Pokemon." "But why do you like Minxiao?" Kiba insisted, "aside from it being your father's Pokemon, that is." Hinata mulled over Kiba's question for a moment. Of course she liked Minxiao. It was a powerful and proud Pokemon. But, she had to like it for more than that, right? After all, he was very disciplined and trained every day, and he was so well-behaved father didn't need keep him in his Pokeball. And he would let her siblings, she referred to Neji as her brother, as he lived with them for as long as she remembered, watch him train. In fact, Hinata secretly thought he'd do extra fancy kata and movements just to please his audience. I like Minxiao's grace and determination and how every movement is perfect, never wasted. Kiba nodded in approval, but Hinata could tell that it wasn't clear enough for him. The girl paused, wondering how she could explain that. Softly, she spoke in poetic poise. Minxiao strong as earth. Yet moves like wind on water. And then, strikes like fire. Kiba's eyes widened in surprise. Ah, that was a very pretty poem, he stumbled out of his O-shaped mouth. He didn't expect the girl to recite poetry for him. A haiku, actually. Hinata blushed, looking away. She didn't know what possessed her to perform a haiku. She just thought it would show the depth of her feelings. So, I guess you're a poet, haikuist, whatever the word would be, Kiba went on, smiling oddly. Oh no, Hinata said, waving her hands. I was just given some lessons so I could be presentable in high society, I'm no poet. That wasn't even really impressive, it would be considered clumsy to a real poet, actually. And poet would be the right word. I liked it, Kiba replied with a smile. It was neat. Growlith, Akamaru barked in agreement. Thank you, the girl said softly. So, do you think you could teach me some haiku? Hinata stumbled in surprise. What? Oh come on. I don't know anything about poetry or any of those high-class things. My family's not very artistic, Kiba explained, and then admitted, in fact, you could say we're a pack of decadent Philistines. Hinata chuckled softly. Well, I suppose I could help you a little, but I'm not very good at it myself. Hey, I've got no problem with your poetry, Kiba retorted. Smiling, Hinata explained the basics. A haiku consists of 3 stanzas consisting of 17 syllables, the first having 5, the middle 7, and 5 again for the end. Go on, try it. The boy's face scrunched up in concentration, muttering out phrases and counting on his fingers. After a while, he got something. My dog's a Growlith. His name is Akamaru. And he's my best friend. After finishing, Kiba looked at Hinata with wide eyes. How was that? Well, you got the length right, she said. But a true haiku is more than that. It conveys a message in poetic poise, using shifts between one of the lines or making an ironic point, or using nature as an analogy. After all, haiku was often used as the final words of a samurai in the old days. Give me an example, Kiba requested. Akamaru yipped in agreement. Hinata mulled over the poem she knew for a moment. Well, here's one. Flesh is illusion. A fitful and fleeting dream. The soul, eternal. After she finished, Hinata explained. In this haiku, the theme is irony and dualism. The poet clearly established this in the first and last verses. In both, he compares the subject, and then says how long it lasts, our bodies, for a moment, and our souls, forever. The middle line is used to add depth to his thoughts and contrast the other lines. Life is a dream from which our souls must wake up from. Kiba tilted his head, a look of amusement on his face. What? It's kind of funny, he explained, haiku are really short and sweet, but you're supposed to take so much from them. Kind of an ironic poetry in itself. That's a good point, Hinata agreed. The two continued with the improvised poetry lessons for a few minutes before Hinata said they should take a break. Okay, Kiba agreed. He pointed over to a small pond. Why don't we go over there and let our Pokemon out? I'm sure your Totodile would like to take a swim. Good idea, Hinata said, smiling. She grabbed her Pokeball and tossed it over to the waterside. Rhapsody, come out. The Pokemon appeared in a flash of energy. Totodile, he announced, waving at his trainer. Then he noticed the pond. Delay. Happy as can be, Rhapsody twirled around a few times before jumping in. Splash. Tot. Laughing, the Totodile swam about in the water, kicking and splashing. He's a pleasant one, Kiba grinned. Rhapsody noticed the Akamaru sitting by the shore, and swam over to him, waving for the puppy Pokemon to jump in. The Growlithe barked at him, running over to the shoreline and then away from it, teasing the Totodile. Rhapsody responded by splashing at him. Be good, you two, Hinata called, sitting down on a nearby bench. Don't worry about them, Kiba said, sitting down next to her. Anyway, don't you have another Pokemon? Nodding, Hinata lifted her other Pokeball. Waltz, come out to play. The ball opened, and her Caterpie appeared on her lap. Waltz looked around, and spotted Kiba. Pi? That's Kiba, my friend, Hinata explained. Hi there, little fella, Kiba said, waving. The Pokemon looked him over before shrugging and climbed down Hinata's leg and over to a nearby tree and proceeded to make his way up to the sweet leaves up high. Cute Pokemon, Kiba said. Thank you, Hinata responded, then added, maybe you should call out your other Pokemon as well? Good idea, Kiba grinned, grabbing the ball from his belt. It'll be a great way to show him that I'm a good trainer. Chance, go. He tossed the ball, and a Poochyena appeared in a flash. Hinata could tell instantly that it was indeed the same one from yesterday. She smiled and tried to pet him. The dog Pokemon responded with a growl that caused the girl to recoil. Chance, Kiba scolded, smacking the Poochyena lightly on the tail side. Bad dog. You don't bite people trying to pet you. To which Chance responded in the most eloquent way he could, the mutt bit his owner's hand. Youch! The boy cried out as he pulled his now swelling finger back. Bad dog. Chance grinned in a satisfied way. Kiba's eyes narrowed. You really think it's a good idea to bite the hand that feeds you, pup? I don't have to feed you the good stuff, you know. The Poochyena just snuffed at Kiba and turned away, looking around at where he was. That's when he spotted Waltz. Poochyena. Chance barked violently, jumping up and down, as if hoping the Caterpie would magically come within his reach. 5-5A. The bug-type squealed, running back and forth among the tree branches. You leave him alone, Hinata said with surprising fierceness, jumping up from the bench. Startled, Chance whipped around, looking at Hinata with wide eyes. Then he bared his teeth and growled. As Hinata jumped back, Kiba got to his feet quickly. Don't you dare bite her. Plop. Using a string shot as a dragline, Waltz had slid down in between his trainer and Chance. The Caterpie glared right back at the Poochyena, which didn't say much, as his big eyes were still adorable in spite of his angry look. The two squared off for about half a second, and then Chance pounced. PSSSSSSSHHHHHHH. Aru. Once again, Chance found himself on the receiving end of Waltz's string shot. However, instead of being in his mouth like last time, the sticky silk was all over the poor doggy, trapping it. Caterpie, Waltz said, satisfied with himself. The bug turned around and looked at his owner. Good job, Hinata praised, to which Waltz jumped up in joy. Well, how do you like that? Kiba said, knelling beside his trapped Pokemon. So tell me, you think you learned your lesson? Chance whined rather pathetically. I'll take that as a yes, Kiba chuckled. He pulled out his Pokeball returned Chance. Waltz let Hinata give him a thank you pat before going back up the tree, contently eating leaves. Kiba sat down on the far end of the bench. There was about 3 feet of space between the two. They watched Akamaru and Rhapsody play in the water for a time. The two Pokemon were getting along quite well. It seemed they invented some sort of game in which Akamaru would run up close to the water and Rhapsody would try to splash him as he ran away. After a while, the puppy Pokemon decided to call it quits and bounded over and plopped himself right into Hinata's lap. Oh! The girl exclaimed, jumping a little. Laughing, she started petting the Growlithe. Well, aren't you friendly? Be nice, Kiba said, glaring a little. But Hinata waved him off. It's okay, she explained as Akamaru curled up, he just wants to be part of the conversation. I suppose you're right, Kiba admitted. But he should know better than to jump in someone's lap like that. Hinata shrugged and continued petting the puppy. Sighing, Kiba led it back, wondering what they should do next. So, you want to continue our haiku lessons or something? He asked awkwardly. Sure, Hinata responded, equally awkward. So, how about you go first, then? Kiba looked around, trying to find some inspiration. He noted Akamaru and smiled, clearing his throat. Out in the forest. Akamaru howls alone. Will you hear the howl? After finishing, Kiba scratched the back of his head. He had to pause halfway though saying it to count it out, and didn't speak as clearly as he wanted to. Sorry, I know it wasn't very good. You did fine, Hinata insisted. In fact, you're doing much better than I was on my first lesson. Now you're just saying stuff, Kiba said with a playful growl. Anyway, your turn. Giving him a small smile, Hinata looked around, scanning for inspiration. A leaf fell onto her head, causing the girl to look up. Walt shrugged apologetically. Hinata nodded, and closed her eyes in concentration. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but clear. Caterpie does sleep. In the winter, wrapped in silk. And wakes, butterfree. She finished, opening her eyes and looking at Kiba. Was it any good? She asked. Perfect, Kiba responded. He wasn't really a qualified haiku judge, but he liked how Hinata seemed so different when she recited her poems. She wasn't exactly confident, but she was no longer being shy. You know, ever since we started with the poetry, you've stopped stuttering, Kiba pointed out. Hinata bushed and giggled slightly, not wanting to speak. If she did, she knew she'd start stuttering again. A bell chiming caught Kiba's attention. Turning around, he saw the source of the sound was an ice cream vendor. Oh, that's right, he said, jumping up. I said we'd get some ice cream, didn't I? Oh, you don't have to, Hinata began, but Kiba had already gotten up and was on his way over. Sighing gently, Hinata reached for her pocketbook, careful not to disturb Akamaru. It was nice of Kiba to be so eager, she mused. The boy returned with 2 soft serve cones. Hope you like vanilla, Kiba said, handing her one. Thank you, Hinata responded, taking it. She started to hand him some money with her free hand. Here's for my cone. Kiba pushed her hand back to her. No way. It's my treat. Hinata shook her head. That's okay, I'll pay for it. Come on, Kiba said, consider it my way of saying thank you for helping me catch Chance. You caught him yourself, Hinata pointed out. I had nothing to do with that. Kiba stuck out his lip. Of course you did. And anyway, what kind of date would I be? We're not on a date. Hinata near shouted, jumping up suddenly. Aside from sending poor Akamaru to the floor without warning, her sudden movement caused her ice cream to fall. Plop. Right onto her jacket. Ew, Hinata whined. This is my only jacket. I'm sorry, Kiba said sheepishly. I'll go get some napkins. He ran back over to the vendor. Thank you, Hinata said as he gave her a handful of napkins. She sat down and started to wipe the ice cream off her front. Here, let me help, Kiba offered hastily, starting to wipe down her jacket. No. I got it, Hinata insisted. She knew that he was only trying to help, but to anyone else, it looked like the boy was pawing at her jacket. What would father saw if he saw her now? No really, I want to help, Kiba explained. He really wanted to fix this mess before she got mad and stormed off. Please, I can handle this, Hinata said, with a surprising amount of force in her voice. I know, but... No. Akamaru jumped up and tried to help by licking the ice cream off her. Hinata reacted accordingly by shoving them both away almost violently. Stop, she insisted, I can handle this. I just want to help, Kiba pleaded, not realizing how much of a fool he was making himself into. No. 00000. Naruto couldn't believe it. It looked like some creep was mugging Hinata, grabbing at her jacket while she was trying to fend him off. You'll pay for that, Naruto shouted, running at them. Shouting a swear word he learned from his mother, Naruto leapt into the air, spinning into a flying roundhouse kick. Naruto's heel slammed into the side of Mugger's face with such force that he was sent sprawling. You mother grabbin' son of a Kumo monk. Landing in a crouching position, Naruto quickly turned to Hinata. You okay? However, the girl was so flustered by his arrival and sudden attack of Kiba that all she could say was, Nah and Naruto. What are? WHO said you could get up? Naruto screamed as the mugger was trying to crawl up. The boy bolted over and kicked him back down and then pinned the creep's shoulders down. Naruto, stop, Hinata shouted, but the boy's adrenaline rush and anger tuned her out. You like mugging defenseless girls, do ya? Naruto hissed. Well, you like this, he demanded, punching the creep in the face. How about this? He shocked in again. Or this. Before he could deliver a third strike, something bit down onto Naruto's arm. Whipping around, Naruto saw that it was an angry Growlithe. It growled and chomped down, causing the boy to loosen his hold on Kiba as pain laced through his arm. Off, Naruto said, whipping his arm back and forth to try and loose the mutt. Using the distraction, Kiba wrenched an arm free and grabbed a handful of the blonde's hair and started wrestling with him. What's your problem, man? Kiba demanded after pinning his opponent down. He snapped back, slamming his forehead into Kiba's lip. Erg. Kiba retched back, hand over his busted lip. Stop. Stop. Stop, Hinata shouted as loud as she could, finally grabbing both boys' attention. This is just a misunderstanding. He attacked me. Kiba protested. You were mugging her. Naruto growled, trying to yank Akamaru off of his arm. Let him go, Kiba shouted. Both Akamaru and Naruto released each other at once, the Pokemon running over to his master's side. Please, both of you, Hinata said, almost crying. A crowd of people had started to form, and she was feeling so embarrassed. Naruto, this is Kiba. He's my friend, he was just trying to help me clean up a spill. Kiba, this is Naruto, he's one of my friends I'm traveling with. Now, both of you, apologize and... No way. Both of the boys shouted at the same time. Hinata was so shocked she jumped back. What? That jerk kicked me in the face. Kiba growled, pointing at his now swollen face. That's because you were attacking her. Naruto retorted defensively. I was helping her clean up a stain on her jacket. She was pushing you away. That doesn't mean I was mugging her. Sure as Houndoom looked like it. Please stop, Hinata whined. Lots of people were staring at them now. And who do you think you are, anyway? Kiba demanded, her boyfriend? Leave me out of this, at least, Hinata begged, sinking down as she felt people staring at them. I know you ain't her boyfriend. Naruto resounded. And how do you know that? You a mind reader? I know Hinata wouldn't go out with a filthy dog like you. Like you're a prize, Kiba said pointedly, you go around kicking people in the head, you psycho. And you pulled on my hair like a little girly girl, Naruto retorted mockingly. Stop it, you're making a scene. Hinata tried again, but to no avail. You attacked me from behind, Kiba growled. Well, I'm standing in front of you right now, Naruto said in a threatening voice, taking a step forward. Don't, Hinata began, but Kiba cut her off. Is that a challenge? He asked, stepping forward as well and puffing out his chest. And what if it is, tough guy? Naruto said, baring his teeth. Kiba opened his mouth to respond. Slap. Slap. Stunned, the two boys actually shut up, their faces stinging where Hinata had slapped them. They looked at her, the poor girl was near tears and red-faced with humiliation. Then they realized just how many people were now staring at them. Hinata, Kiba began. No, I don't want to hear it, Hinata cried. Just leave me alone. I'm sorry, Hinata, Naruto said, reached over to try and hug her, but the girl jerked away. I said leave me alone. She repeated, turning and running away. 000. That's great, Jane, Sakura said, cheering as the Mankey delivered a vicious scratch attack. The fighting Pokemon landed gracefully, having jumped high after the ducklet. Ino cringed. In spite of type advantage, this fight had been even. Fly higher, she ordered, stay out of that beast's range. Quacking a response, Odette flapped her wings hard, quickly rising over 12 feet in the air. Sakura scoffed. Is that all you can do, Ino, run away? Jane, climb the jungle gym and let's show her how far you can jump. Key. Growling, the pig monkey ran over to said climbing gym and clamber up it. However, as soon as she way halfway up, a squirt of water knocked her right off. Forget that Odette fights at a range? Ino mockingly asked as Jane at the floor. She glanced proudly at her Pokemon. Fire your water gun at will, honey. The Mankey rolled onto her feet, dodging the blast of water. Hissing, she stomped angrily. What a dirty tactic. Don't get frustrated, Sakura instructed. Use the playground for cover. Jane nodded and dove behind a slide, evading another and then stated weaving and jumping from one set of equipment to the next. Ducking under a stream of water, Jane flipped over onto a roundabout and kicked the ground to get it spinning. Odette squawked and stared as the Mankey went round and round. Keep shooting. Ino called, gritting her teeth. Duck duck. She fired another water gun, but Jane was moving too fast. The Mankey suddenly let go and flew off the roundabout. She landed on a swing set, going way back into the air before being swung forward and jumping out at the height of the swing. Go, Jane, go. Sakura cheered as her Pokemon flew at Ino's, claws outstretched. Bam! Someone had ran into Sakura, sending them both to the ground. Hey! The pink-haired girl screamed, ready to pound in someone's head. What's your prob? She stopped midway, realizing, much to her shock, that the person in question was Hinata. The girl was sniffling with red, teary eyes, and looked humiliated. What happened? Sakura asked, getting to her feet and helping Hinata to hers. Hinata opened her mouth twice, each time shutting it and crying some more. What happened? Sakura repeated forcefully. Hinata muttered something. Come again? The girl took in a deep breath, holding it in for a few seconds. After that, Hinata spoke, very softly. Kiba and Naruto sorta got into a fight and... What? Sakura demanded. What was Naruto doing there? How did they get into a fight? What's going on? Ino butted in, finally getting tired of being ignored. She had been calling over from the other side of the battlefield before finally getting so exasperated she just walked over. I thought we were in the middle of a battle. Screw that, Sakura shouted. Both Ino and Hinata both jumped. I've got better things to do, like find out what Naruto and Kiba did. No. Wait. The soft-spoken girl said. But it was too late. Sakura whipped out her Pokeball, called Jane back, picked up Water Lily, and ran off in the direction Hinata had come from. But what about our match? Ino asked, saying to herself more than anyone else. She turned and looked at the crying girl before sighing. Stay here. With that, Ino returned her own Pokemon and ran after Sakura. 00000. When Sakura found the boys, they were sitting on a bench, looking miserable. She could see that Kiba's face was bruised and swollen from a blow, and cringed imagining what Naruto had done this time. When she approached, Naruto opened his mouth, but the girl cut him off. I don't want to hear it, Naruto, Sakura said apparently, just tell me how you made Hinata cry. Well, Naruto said rubbing the back of his head and looking at Kiba. Well, it's a funny story. That girl wasn't laughing, Ino told coldly, walking up from behind Sakura. Who dat? Naruto asked, tilting his head. Never mind, she's just a fiend of mine, Sakura said, waving her hand. Ino gave her a glance at the world friend, but said nothing. Meanwhile, Kiba was wondering how his life became so complicated. Now, start explaining, Sakura insisted. Well, 00000. When Sasuke came to, the first thing he noticed was that he was back in the secret room. The second thing was that he was tied up and gagged. The boy fought against his bindings, but he could already tell he wouldn't be able to get free. Growling, he looked around. He spotted a tray on the ledge of the examining table. If that phony doctor had actually been dumb enough to leave some equipment out, like a scalpel or knife, Sasuke'd be home free. Struggling, the boy flipped over onto his belly and squirmed over to a table. He got up onto his knees and reached with his nose. Darn, the tray was just out of his reach. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke tried jumping up, but it proved difficult. The first 2 times, he ended up falling over onto his face. However, he finally knocked the tray over. Only to have it fall smack on his face. Urk! His vision was blotted out by stars. To Houndoom with it all. Shinx? Sasuke's eyes flew open at the unexpected sound. Akoto was looking down at him with a curious eye, his left eye was still covered with a bandage. Akoto, how did you get here? Sasuke asked. Actually, with his mouth being gagged, he said, ahoho, ho het here? But the Shinx understood enough to move to the side and point at his Pokeball, which had fallen from the table onto the floor when Sasuke had knocked the tray down. Sasuke smiled as best he could. He couldn't believe those crooks were stupid enough to leave his Pokeballs behind. 00000. And that's what happened, Naruto concluded, looking rather sheepish and ashamed of himself. Sakura looked down at him, her glaring eyes burning holes right through him. The girl breathed in deep before asking, and you didn't think to apologize? I told you already, Naruto protested, I tried, but Hinata just ran away. Ow. Without warning, Sakura hit him on the head. That's not good enough, she shouted angrily, hitting him again for good measure. You should have gone after her and tried again instead of mopping around, feeling sorry for yourselves. Kiba looked ever so slightly smug, saying, I told you ouch. Sakura hit him as well. You're just as bad as him, she scolded. But. Both boys began, but this time, Ino cut them off. Why didn't you listen to Hinata when she tried to get you two to stop fighting? She asked pointedly, instead of waiting for her to be completely embarrassed. Naruto opened his mouth to speak, but he closed it in shame. We were angry and stupid, Kiba said, head hung low. Naruto nodded solemnly. Well then, Sakura growled, why don't you stop sitting around here and go apologize now? You're right, Naruto said, getting up to his feet. But, what do we say? Bam! Stop talking and do it, Sakura shouted, pointing to where Hinata was. The two guys recoiled in fear and ran off, not sure exactly what to do, but resolved to do it. Sakura watched the two until they disappeared. She sighed in exasperation, why are men so stupid? Beats me, Ino responded. Did you really need to keep hitting them, though? They felt bad enough as is. You don't know Hinata. She's really shy and sensitive, and she comes from the Hyuga clan, Sakura explained. Ino raised her eyebrows a bit. Yeah, Sakura said, so just imagine how bad it would be if her father got wind of this, how bad Hinata would feel. Okay, I get it, Ino sighed, no need to beat a dead Ponyta. Waterlily started to fuss around, so Sakura set the Azurill down and let her play in the pond. So, do you still want to continue our battle? Sakura asked slowly. Ino smiled and shook her head. Nah, I was being pretty petty and immature back there. Sorry about that, by the way. Sakura grinned just a bit. Don't feel too sorry, I was just as bad. Yeah, Ino countered, but that's normal for you. Watch it, Sakura said warningly, we just made up, no need to start another battle, right? True enough, Ino admitted. Then she said, after a pause, when did we become friends again? When we had a common hate for two boys. Sakura suggested. Ino was about to respond, but something behind Sakura caught her attention, causing her eyes to go wide with delight. A snowy Eevee, she cried, grabbing a Pokeball from her belt. What? Sakura whipped around, and sure enough, she could see Bayoshi running towards them. It's so cute. Ino squealed, I'm gonna catch it. Wait, Sakura said, grabbing Ino's arm before she could throw her Pokeball. Don't even try it, Sakura, Ino growled, pulling away. I saw it first, and there's no way you could convince me to let you catch it. That Eevee belongs to Sasuke, Sakura shouted. As if to prove it, Bayoshi ran right up to her and jumped onto her shoulder. See? She looked at the Eevee questioningly. But what are you doing here, without Sasuke? Hey, girls. Sakura and Ino both looked up to see who was calling them. A man in a doctor's coat with a fresh black eye and a broken nose came running up to them. Ino flinched at the sight of him. That Eevee's mine. I'm a Pokemon doctor and that Eevee was in my care when he ran away, he huffed, leaning on his knees. Thanks for finding him for me. The man reached out, but Sakura only stepped away. You're not a Pokemon doctor, she said coldly, reaching for a Pokeball. From her shoulder, Bayoshi hissed in agreement. What I mean? The phony doctor asked quickly, taking another step forward. I mean you're a fake, Sakura said fiercely, being sure to put distance between him as she spoke. Ino followed suit and grabbed a Pokeball as well. For starters, that's a fetal stethoscope on your neck. You use it to listen to a baby's heartbeat, a poke doctor wouldn't use that. And the coat you're wearing is stolen, it's a size too small. And if you were a real doctor, you would have sent an assistant to get Eevee while you fixed your stupid broken nose. Oh, burned by a 12-year-old, Ino added smugly. Alright, you little brat, the fake hissed, give me that Eevee. He lunged, but both Sakura and Ino were ready. Jane. Odette. A flash, and the two Pokemon appeared. They may have been a little battle-worn, but they looked pumped and ready to fight. The man staggered back. If that's the way you want to play, fine. He pulled out two Pokeballs and chucked them. Patrat, Starly. Get rid of these girls. 00000. Hinata sat down on a swing, crying gently. She couldn't believe how things had exploded in her face. Pie? A squeaky voice at her feet pondered. Ah. Hinata jumped up, but then stopped when she saw it was Waltz, who was being carried by Rhapsody. The loyal deers must have followed after her when she ran off. Oh, she sighed. Then a pang of guilt hit her. I left both of you behind. I'm such a bad trainer. Tutu, Rhapsody said sympathetically, patting her while Waltz climbed into her lap. She smiled and stroked them affectionately. I'm sorry, she said softly. Sighing, Hinata looked up. I shouldn't have done that, she admitted. Rhapsody gave her a confused look, so she went on. I shouldn't have slapped Naruto and Kiba and just run off, especially without you. That didn't solve anything. They probably feel terrible now. And now Sakura and her friend are going to be yelling at them. Then she added, no wonder they haven't come looking for me. Guiltily, she realized that's what she was hoping they would do. To come and see how bad and embarrassed they made her feel, and for them to feel sorry and apologize to her. Hinata couldn't believe how much of a spoiled child she was being. No wonder father's so disappointed with me. Pi Caterpie Waltz protested, looking at her sadly. Delay, Rhapsody agreed. Oh, thanks, guys, Hinata sighed. She stopped talking when something furry suddenly rocketed into her, sending the girl flying off the swing set. Whoa! Hinata screamed, scrambling up and looking around wildly for whatever knocked her down. Rhapsody had found and was now holding up the culprit, Puck. Fur it. Ret fur, Puck said quickly, escaping Rhapsody's hold. Hinata didn't understand, but both Waltz and Rhapsody did, and now all three Pokémon were jumping up and down in front of her, crying out and protesting. What's going on? Hinata stammered, I don't understand. Then I'll explain it to you. Once again, Hinata jumped at the unexpected voice. It belonged to a spiteful-looking woman whose face was covered with still bleeding cat scratches. Nearby, a Meowth. Give me the Furret. The woman said harshly, and you know what? Give me your other Pokémon as well. What? Hinata said, stumbling back onto her rear. Stop stuttering and do it. The woman snapped. She turned to her Meowth. Take her. It looked at her for a moment in confusion, but the woman kicked it and the cat Pokémon ran at Hinata fearfully, baring its claws. Toto delay, Rhapsody shouted, jumping forward and blasting the Meowth away with a water gun. Caterpie, Waltz hissed, crawling forward as well. Rhapsody. Waltz, Hinata said slowly, astounded. Fine, be that way. The woman shouted, breaking out a Pokéball. She tossed it, and out came a white squirrel Pokémon Hinata didn't recognize. I need something to vent my frustration out on. Gritting her teeth, Hinata got up. Waltz, use string shot on the Meowth, scratch the squirrel, Rhapsody. Fake out, Meowth. The scratch cat Pokémon moved blindingly fast, striking at first Waltz then Rhapsody, disrupting their attacks. Now hit the Totodile with a spark, Pachirisu. The woman commanded. The squirrel Pokémon's cheeks sparked with electricity that traveled about its body surrounding it. The Pachirisu then charged forward, tackling into Rhapsody, severely shocking it. An electric type? Hinata gasped, taking out her Pokédex. Pachirisu, the electric squirrel Pokémon, it chimed in a feminine voice. This hyperactive Pokémon generates electricity while it moves, storing it in the fur and releasing it through its cheeks. When it stores berries, it leaves behind balls of charged fur to prevent others from stealing its stash. Hinata winced inwardly, she was at a disadvantage here. Give up. The woman shouted, as if reading the young girl's mind. You're just a kid, and I'm a member of Team Snake. You can't win. Pi, Waltz spat defiantly, using a string shot to bind both the cat and squirrel Pokémon. Hinata gritted her teeth in determination. My Pokémon won't give up, and neither will I. Rhapsody, soak them with water gun. The Totodile fired a jet of water at the two subdued Pokémon. The Meowth hissed in anger while the Pachirisu endured it. A water attack against an electric type, is that the best you can do? The thuggish woman taunted. Meowth, scratch free of the web and charge up another spark, Pachirisu. The two Pokémon obediently went to work. However, as soon as the electric Pokémon's cheeks lit up, both Pokémon were suddenly shocked. Gah! What's going on? The woman shouted, brandishing her fists. Rhapsody's water gun soaked both Pokémon, and Rhapsody stuck them together, Hinata explained smugly. When you had your Pachirisu use spark, electricity traveled through the water to your Meowth, and then the Waltz's silk back to Pachirisu, completing the circuit and electrocuting both of them. The thug ground her teeth. Clever, little girl, but that won't change anything. We'll see, Hinata said. Rhapsody, keep it up. 0000. Starly, use wing attack on the Mankey. The bird Pokémon flew high and then dove at Jane, wings spread. Stop him, Odette. Ino ordered. The water bird Pokemon rammed into the Starly, protecting her partner. Thanks, Ino, Sakura said, grinning. The fake doctor winced. The two girls were working together perfectly. Patrat, leer down the bird. Aha, Sakura laughed. Jane, show him a real leer. The Patrat's wicked red and yellow eye glowed sinisterly. Instead of being frightened, Sakura's Mankey just glared right back, the heat of her eyes actually causing the scout Pokemon to back away. Screw it, Patrat, the man ordered, just hit her with a bite. WSSSHHHH. Odette cut him off, hitting the distracted Patrat with her water gun. Not wasting any time, Jane jumped forward and delivered a sliding kick at the normal Pokemon, sending it reeling. However, instead of looking worried, the man just shouted, "Now, Starly!" Flying into Odette, the bird locked talons with her and started slapping with its wings. Fight him off. Ino ordered. Odette tried, but her foe was far stronger. Sakura turned to Jane. Hit that thing's wing with a karate chop. Mankey, Jane nodded. She rushed up a nearby tree and then kicked off into the air, grabbing onto the Starly's back. The added weight pulled all three Pokemon to the ground. Jane took aim at her foe's left wing, and stuck, screaming a key shout. Mankey. Her attack hit true, and the enemy Pokemon released Odette as it staggered in pain. Use wing attack, Ino commanded. Odette slapped the Starly with her wing, it hit the ground and didn't get up. Patrat, bite. The Patrat snuck up behind Jane and leapt onto her back, biting down. Key. She shrieked, thrashing around and trying to get the thing off her. However, it stuck tight. That's it. The crook cheered. Help her, Sakura shouted at Ino. Wing attack that rat off Jane. She responded, looking at Odette. The ducklet flew around, trying to get a clear shot, but Jane kept moving around. Finally, Odette shouted at the Mankey to hold still, and she was able to smack it off. Once the Patrat was off, Jane finished it was a karate chop. Ha, we win. Ino cheered, high-fiving Sakura. The two girls turned to the fake doctor. Now, why don't you beat it? Where did he go? Gotcha. The man, seeing that he wouldn't win, simply snuck up behind Sakura and lunged at her, reaching for the Eevee on her shoulder. Hey! Sakura pushed him away, but the man just grabbed her throat. Back off, Ino shouted. She pushed something against his neck, and the man started convulsing and shaking violently, letting go of Sakura and hitting the ground. Bayushi jumped off of Sakura's shoulder and hit him in the gut, knocking him out. What did you do to him? The pink-haired girl asked, messaging her neck. Have a look, the blonde responded, holding up a small, black device. It was a taser. Sakura's eyes widened. Why do you have that? Daddy bought it for me, Ino explained. He wanted to make sure I was safe. Good thing he did, huh? She grinned evilly. Say, why don't you try it out? She suggested, motioning to the unconscious thug. No, I couldn't, Sakura said quickly. Come on. The man tried to choke you, Ino argued. Not like he don't deserve it. Sakura said firmly, I'm not going to sink to his. Ach, the thug moaned, stirring. Die, Sakura shouted, grabbing the taser from Ino and jabbing him in the neck, pulling the trigger. Ah! He shook violently before going limp. Wide-eyed, Sakura looked at the device like it was a smoking gun. Oh! I didn't mean to. Don't worry, Ino teased, you only did it in self-defense. Now, let's call the cops before some of his friends show up. Sakura rolled her eyes. Yeah right, if he had friends, they'd have shown up. Someone put their hand on her shoulder. Sakura. Ah! Screaming, the girl stabbed the taser into the person behind her, pulling the trigger. After a few seconds, Sakura recognized the screams of agony, and opened her eyes. It was Sasuke. She also realized now would be a good time to stop tasering him. Sasuke? Sakura said as she pulled the taser away. You okay? Is that you, Grandpa? The boy asked, hitting the ground. Oh no, I killed him, Sakura shouted. 00000. Waltz and Rhapsody both slammed into the Meowth. It hit the ground, and struggled to get up before collapsing, out cold. Good job, Hinata said, unable to believe she was winning. Useless cat. The woman spat, returning it. Pachirisu, don't fail me. Waltz, use sting shot. The caterpie sent another stream of sticking silk at the squirrel. However, it jumped above the stream, and then took hold of the threads and sent a bolt of electricity through them to Waltz. "Help him, Rhapsody," Hinata cried. Totota. He shot a stream of water at his foe, but the Pachirisu just jumped out of the way, rushing forward and tackling him with another spark. This time, the Totodile didn't get up. "Rhapsody." Hinata pulled out her Pokeball and recalled him. "Oh, I'm sorry. Enough of this." The thug woman shouted, "Pachirisu, just take her out." "Pachi." It ran at Hinata, wreathed in electricity. Just as it jumped at the girl, something jerked it back. "Sue?" The electric Pokemon turned around to see that the caterpie had lassoed its tail with a string shot. Hissing, the squirrel sent a volt at the bug, who held him back still. "Waltz!" His owner shouted, getting up to try and help him. However, the Team Snake woman blocked her path, holding up a club-like branch. "I've had enough," she screamed, swinging her club. Hinata clenched her eyes. "Bam! Back off, hag!" Growlith. Surprised, Hinata opened her eyes. Naruto was standing over the woman's unconscious form, while Kiba and Akamaru were chasing off the Pachirisu. As soon as her eyes met Naruto's, the boy spoke up. "She was attacking you, right? It looked like that. I didn't just roundhouse kick some innocent bystander again, right?" Of course she was attacking Hinata. Kiba growled, running over to see if the girl was okay. She was swinging a club at her, stupid. "Hinata, are you alright?" Naruto asked, ignoring Kiba's insult. "Naruto, Kiba," Hinata said, getting teary-eyed. Without warning, she threw her arms around them, pulling the two boys into a tight hug. Both boys looked at each other, not sure what was going on. "Though girls didn't forgive easy," Kiba whispered to Naruto, who just shrugged. She finally let go when Waltz pulled at her leg. "Oh, Waltz, you saved me," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. Pie?" Strangely, Waltz began to glow. Then, he started wrapping himself in silk, changing his shape. "Waltz?" Hinata squeaked. The glow faded, and a new Pokemon was there, a green cocoon-shaped one. "Metapod," he said softly. "He evolved," Naruto said, pulling out his Pokédex. Metapod, the cocoon Pokemon. Metapod is the evolved form of Caterpie and is very vulnerable in this unmoving form while it waits to evolve into Butterfree. Swift evolution is the key to the Caterpie line's survival. "Whoa, that's so neat," Naruto said. However, a certain Furret suddenly appeared out of nowhere, slinking up to Yanta's Pokemon. "Puck, how did you get here?" Naruto demanded. His Pokemon just ignored him and started licking Waltz as if he was a lollipop. "Puck, I said you couldn't eat him," Naruto shouted. Puck continued to ignore his master, and bit down on the Metapod, only to cry out in pain and jump away. Despite being near helpless, Metapod can use harden to make his shell tougher than a sheet of steel, the Pokédex explained. "Ha!" Naruto shouted, pointing at Puck and laughing, "serves you right." "But, what was that woman even chasing Puck for?" Hinata asked. "Huh? 0000. When Sasuke woke up, he found himself surrounded by people. There was Hinata, Sakura, Naruto, and two people he didn't know, a blonde girl and a wildman-looking boy. Oh, and there was Bayushi, Water Lily, and some Growlithe. "Rise and shine, Sleeping Beauty." Naruto cheered, slapping his friend on the shoulder. "Buzz off," Sasuke growled. "Where am I?" "At the Pokemon Center. The cops say that those two people that were running the center weren't doctors. They was members of Team Snake." Naruto explained. "I figured that out already when they tried to steal Bayushi and attacked me," Sasuke said darkly. "Tell me something I don't know." Sakura, Ino, and Hinata kicked their snaky butts and saved Bayushi and Puck?" Naruto said. "Okay," Sasuke sighed, "and who's Ino?" "Me." The girl with blonde hair said, raising her hand eagerly. "And you?" Sasuke asked, turning to the wild boy. "Kiba Inuzuka," he said proudly, puffing his chest out, "and this is Akamaru," he added, pointing at his Growlithe. "Fantastic," Sasuke replied sarcastically. He paused for a while. "So, how did I get knocked out at the park again?" Both Ino and Sakura looked at each other. Pokemon Konoha. Chapter 8. Okay, Sasuke, it seems you're just fine, Dr. Duran said, finishing his examination. He was a tall and thin man, wore square glasses, and had a face as long as ponitas. Nothing's wrong with you, and those burns on your neck should go away in a few days. It turned out that the Team Snake fakers had stashed the real doctor and nurse away in a holding cell designed for uncontrollable Pokemon. The police had found them, and were now questioning everyone, looking through all the files and taking notes on everything. Part of Sasuke wondered if word of this would reach his father. After all, he considered even the smallest activities of the organization important. Maybe he'd be proud of his boy for helping to turn in some of the clan's members. Then Sasuke shook his head. His father would probably be embarrassed that Sasuke was caught and tied up by the thugs, and would hope no one would mention it. Sakura had ordered the boy to have the doctor check him up and make sure he wasn't injured from the tasing incident. Sighing, Sasuke jumped off the table and made his way for the door, Bayushi following ever faithfully. Just a second. A peppy voice called. Sasuke turned around and faced Jennifer, the center's nurse and receptionist. She was a pleasant-faced woman with curly, neon pink dyed hair and full lips painted electric blue. Crazy appearance aside, she seemed to be very sensible and smart. You forgot something, she explained, holding something behind her back. Her grin was somehow mischievous. What? Sasuke began, only for the nurse to stick a raspberry sucker into his mouth. Here you go, Jennifer said, a little sugar for a sugar. Enjoy. She then added quietly, Lord knows you could do with some sweetening up. Putting on a forced smile, Sasuke thanked them and walked out, spitting the candy out into the first trash can he found. He hated sweets. So, did the doc say if it was terminal? Naruto teased, grabbing hold of Sasuke's shoulder. He had been waiting outside for him. Sasuke chose to ignore him. Where is everyone? Hinata, Sakura and Kiba are in the nursery, Naruto said. Ino went to bed, said something about wanting to get up early for something. Good, now show me the way to the nursery, Sasuke instructed. 0000. The nursery was like an indoor green room, meant to allow a Pokemon to rest in a more natural environment. It had a small pond, trees, grass, and benches and tables for trainers. Sakura, Hinata and Kiba had already let their Pokemon out. Jane was swinging around in the trees, Water Lily and Rhapsody were swimming along and having a good time, and Kiba's puppies were wrestling, though Sasuke couldn't tell if they were playing or really fighting. Waltz was sitting still, not moving a muscle, though Naruto thought he was looking at the leaves in the trees longingly. Bayushi noticed that Sakura's lap was Azurill-free, a rare event indeed, and promptly ran over and jumped into her lap. Sakura laughed in surprise. Hey guys, Naruto shouted, taking out his Pokeballs. A moment later, Kata and Puck appeared. Go have some fun, you two, Naruto explained, waving his hands. Puck ran over to Waltz and looked him over, wondering whether or not he could be eaten, before settling on some berries on a bush nearby, while Kata looked around and explored. Don't get too wound up, Sakura warned. Bedtime's in 10 minutes, understand? Let them have some fun, Kiba said, crossing his arms, how else you gonna gain their trust? Says the boy who's bitten by his Puccina every time he calls him out. Sakura pointed out. Call out your boys, Sasuke, Naruto suggested, sitting down with the rest of the group. Sasuke nodded. Togashi, Akodo, out. The Charmander and Shinx materialized. Togashi went over to Kata and the two started walking around together, but Akodo stayed close to Sasuke, slightly rubbing up against his leg. Sasuke smiled slightly and scratched the feline behind the ear. So, did the doctor say you're okay, Sasuke? Sakura asked as the boy sat down nearby. Fine, Sasuke grunted. Akodo jumped up on the bench next to his master, laying down with his paws crossed, looking dignified. Stop it! Hinata suddenly shouted, glaring at Puck, who had started licking her Metapod. If he wants to break his teeth on Waltz's shell, let him, Naruto said, looking at his furret crossly. He'll learn eventually. But he's upsetting Waltz, Hinata pointed out, hands on her hips. Good point, Naruto admitted. He got up, and started telling Puck off. The furret stuck his tongue out and bounded away. Why you miserable little, Naruto shouted, chasing after him. Watching the boy dive into the bushes after his disobedient Pokemon, Sakura chuckled and looked down at Bayushi. Too bad Puck's not nearly as well behaved as you, huh baby? Bayoshi purred loudly and rubbed up in her arms. "You're a good boy, even if you are so spoiled," Sasuke said, smiling slightly, not even noticing when Akoto started pushing up against him. Hinata noticed the Shinx glaring at Bayoshi, and was about to say something when Kiba cut her off. "Hey, look," the wild boy called, pointing. Akamaru, Togashi, Puck, and Kata were now tossing a ball back and forth. "They're all finally playing together," Kiba said. "All?" Sakura asked, cocking an eyebrow. "Are you sure you're counting that right?" "Sure," Kiba responded. "There's Akamaru, Togashi, Kata, Puck and, where's Chance?" Naruto snickered and pointed to the door. The Puccina was trying to dig under it and make a break for freedom. "Hey! Get back here, you ingrate!" 0000. When it came time for bed, most everyone agreed to let their Pokémon sleep in the nursery. It would do them good resting in their natural environments. However, Kiba declined. Akamaru slept with him always, and he couldn't let Chance out of his sight too long or the pup might escape. Bayoshi was an inside Pokémon, and insisted on staying with Sakura. Sasuke couldn't bring himself to argue against it and agreed. Yawning, Sasuke stretched on his bed. Naruto, of course, had fallen asleep within 5 minutes of lying down, and was now snoring away. Sasuke turned over and tried to tune it out, but the blonde was being even louder than normal. He was about to get up and stuff a sock in Naruto's big mouth when something scratched on the door. Figuring it was Bayoshi, wanting to sleep with him for some reason, Sasuke got up and opened it. Much to his surprise, a long furry thing zoomed in. Sasuke yelped slightly before realizing it was only Puck. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, squinting in the dark. The furret looked up at him real pitifully, eyes big and watery, before whining softly. Sighing, Sasuke just shrugged and closed the door. "Sleep with Naruto." Quickly, Puck climbed up onto Naruto's bed, and looked around. A minute later, he was curled up on Naruto's stomach. Then he was stretched out on his back, tail over one side of the bed and head over the other. Then Puck tried curling around his owner's feet. But Naruto kept kicking at him. Finally, Puck ended up wrapped around Naruto's head. The two contently slumbered. Sasuke chuckled softly at Naruto sleeping through all that before grabbing his Pokénav and taking a picture of the sickeningly cute scene. Aside from being useful blackmail for the future, Sasuke would be sure to send it to his mother in the morning, who would of course send it to Naruto's mother. Any Kushina would show it off to everyone and give Sasuke a kiss for sending it. Blushing slightly at the thought, Sasuke was able to drift asleep, now that Naruto's snoring had finally quieted down. Later that night. Tap. Z. Tap tap. ZGRHR? Not now, Bayoshi, Sasuke grunted, pulling the covers over his face. Go pee on Naruto or something. He was almost back asleep. Tap tap tap. Sasuke growled. This was going to be a long night. Sasuke, are you awake? Someone whispered. Bayoshi, I already said not wait, did you just talk? The boy sat up quickly, eyes widening, straining to see in the darkness. Facing him was something long, brown, and furry. Gah! Shush, Naruto hissed, holding up a finger to his mouth. In the other hand, he held Puck up in Sasuke's face. The Pokémon looked like he was in pain. Quiet, people are sleeping. Sasuke growled. What is it, Naruto? I think Puck's sick, Naruto whined. The furret convulsed and twisted in his owner's arms. We're in a poke center, go take him to the nurse, Sasuke snapped, wondering how dumb Naruto could get. Besides, what makes you think he's even sick? Blay! Was Puck's response as he puked all over Sasuke. 0000. Gah! What here? Sakura shouted, jumping up from her bed, fists swinging. She got up so quickly that Bayoshi was thrown onto the ground by Sakura's sudden movements, and was hissing his displeasure. The girl ignored him and looked around in the dark. Even in the poor lighting, she could tell Hinata was thrashing around in her bed. Hinata, what's wrong? She asked, turning on the lights. Hinata's eyes were clamped tightly shut, her arms wrapped around her, as if she was in pain, and the girl was thrashing back and forth violently, crying out. Hinata! Wake up, you're having a nightmare, Sakura cried, grabbing the girl and shaking her back and forth. She didn't wake up, and continued to retch around. Wake up, wake up. Sakura screamed. She turned and ran to the door. Nurse. We need help. 00000. A little while later. So what's wrong with Puck, Dr. Duran? Naruto asked quietly. Puck was now sleeping on the examination table, having been drugged by the doctor after he had suddenly went wild while Dr. Duran was looking at him. Sasuke sat cross-legged next to Naruto, looking foul and bad-tempered. He had to shower and change clothes after Puck's accident, and he was feeling tired and grumpy. Well, it seems that Puck is just fine, Duran said, looking at his clipboard. However, I wouldn't say he's out of the woods just yet. Just lay it out straight, Sasuke sighed, no need to drag it out being polite and all. Naruto nodded. I can take the truth, Doc. I'm tough. No, really, Duran laughed, your forehead is going to be fine. No need to be dramatic. Naruto exhaled, even Sasuke smiled slightly. And? Sasuke asked, tilting his head and crossing his arms. After examining Puck, I noticed he was showing the symptoms normally associated of a Pokemon injected with a TM. Then I recalled how Mr. Uchiha Naruto snickered at Sasuke being referred to so formally, mentioning how those two Team Snake thugs attempted to inject your Pokemon with them. The police had found several missing vials and pills, and even a few TMs were not accounted for, Duran said. So you think they injected Puck with a TM? Naruto asked, but Sasuke stopped them. Remember? Yes, but he did leave the two with them for some time, Dr. Duran pointed out. They could have easily injected one or both of them in the meantime. I have a list of everything missing or stolen, but I need to do some more tests to see what exactly they used on him. At least 4 TMs are missing, any number of which could have been stolen or sold. But what if they did use one on Puck? Naruto asked, almost ready to cry. Can't injecting a TM into a Pokemon that can't handle it be fatal? Don't worry, Duran said, if it was dangerous to begin with, then your furret would have reacted immediately. In fact, he's going to be fine. Really? Of course, the doctor continued with a smile. Your furret didn't react to the TM's injection immediately, so it's safe to assume his body is very compatible with it and didn't reject it from the start, as most Pokemon would. Right now, I'd say he's in the stage where his body is adjusting to the changes. So far, he's doing rather well, and I think he'll be fine. How long will this take before Puck's back on his feet? Sasuke asked. I can't give you a set number. I don't know what the TM even was or how his species naturally reacts to it. Even so, I won't pretend I'm an authority on the subject. It could take a little as 8 hours, or as long as a day or two, considering how well he's handled it thus far, but I'd be more inclined to say sooner than later. Good, Naruto breathed out. Now, why don't you two check up on your friends and then get some sleep? Dr. Duran suggested, referring to Hinata. Sakura's shouts for the nurse drew Naruto's attention, and had he not been busy taking care of Puck, he would have been with them right now. But I want to stay with Puck. Naruto protested, jumping up. Duran nodded understandingly. I know, but you need to understand that I have to run some more tests, and you might be in the way. Besides, don't you want to check on your friend? Naruto looked at his furret doubtfully, feeling torn. He stroked his Pokemon's fur, worry painted across his face. Sasuke placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Don't be afraid, he said in a steady voice. The doctor's going to take good care of him. I'll come get you the moment something happens, Duran agreed, smiling. Naruto looked at the doctor, and then back at Puck. Promise? Dr. Duran smiled. I promise. Nodding, Naruto kneeled down and gave Puck a soft kiss on the head before leaving the room. Sasuke could see tears in his eyes. He moved to follow, but the doctor held the dark-haired boy back. I think it's only practical to assume that if your friend's furret was injected, it's possible that your Eevee was, too. Sasuke nodded, wincing at the thought. Has your Eevee exhibited any signs of discomfort or nervousness? Has he been acting differently or maybe showing indications that he's in pain? No, Sasuke admitted, shaking his head, but he did want to sleep with Sakura, the little traitor that's normal behavior for him, by the way, so I'll have to ask her she noticed anything. Good, Duran said, however, even so, I want to examine him tonight. Why don't you bring him to me after you finish checking up on your friend? Sasuke nodded and left. Once in the hallway, he caught up with Naruto. Hey, he said softly. Naruto wiped his face before looking at him. I'm fine, the boy said quickly. Sasuke sighed. You can worry about Puck. I understand. Why should I be worried? Naruto asked quickly, voice cracking. The doc said Puck's going to be fine, so he's going to be fine. I'm not even thinking about it. Why are you? There's nothing to be worried about. You're such a wimp. As he talked, the blonde started speaking faster and faster, rambling on as he tried to act tough. Well, you know, Sasuke interrupted when Naruto paused to breathe in. Dr. Duran said Bayoshi might have been injected too, and I'm worried. You are? Yeah, Sasuke said. Just thinking of something bad happening to my baby makes me want to tear up and cry. In spite of himself, Naruto laughed. You're such a softie. Yeah, his friend replied sarcastically, I wish I was tough as you. Naruto felt much better now. 00000. Hinata sat up on the examining table as Nurse Jennifer looked her over. Bayoshi was curled up next to the girl, watching with interested eyes. For once, he seemed to realize that now was not the time to be begging for attention. Sitting nearby, Sakura waited silently. Well, I can safely say nothing's wrong with you physically, Jennifer said with a smile, setting her stethoscope down. She stifled a yawn. Save you might be a bit sleep deprived. But what about what happened? Hinata demanded. Can't say for sure, considering I'm trained to work with Pokemon, not a people, the nurse admitted freely, but I'd say you were just having a night terror. A night terror? Hinata asked, are you sure? Sakura noticed she seemed to know what a night terror was. I think so, Jennifer responded. You're not physically hurt, you were sleeping when it happened, you were very scared, and we couldn't wake you up. That's basically the telltale signs of a night terror. Have you ever had one before? Sakura asked suddenly. Slowly, Hinata nodded her head. I used to have them lot when I was real little, she admitted, when mother. She trailed off, and picked up Bayoshi and started petting him. I see, the nurse said softly. Well, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Stress induces night terrors. Anyway, this was probably just a result of all the excitement you went through today. If these attacks continue to happen, all I can suggest is go see a doctor. A people doctor. For now, just get some rest. We'll do that, ma'am, Sakura said, winking and leading Hinata back to their rooms. Soon after they were alone, Hinata said, could you not tell the boys about this? Sakura glanced at her friend. Sure, but something tells me they're gonna want to know what happened. Why don't you want them to know anyway? The dark-haired girl sighed, scratching behind Bayoshi's ear absent-mindedly. I just don't want them to think I'm delicate or weak. Sympathetically, Sakura patted her shoulder. There's nothing wrong or weak about you, Hinata. But if it makes you more comfortable, I'll keep quiet. Hey! An annoyingly familiar voice called. Sakura winced as Naruto ran up to them, smiling big and proud. So, what hap? Be quiet, Sakura hissed, slapping her hand over the idiot's mouth. It's the middle of the night and Ino and Kiba are still sleeping. Seriously, Sasuke growled, slinking up from behind the blonde. So, what's wrong with Puck? Sakura asked, taking her hand away from Naruto. Long story, Sasuke said, carefully taking Bayoshi back from Hinata. Naruto will have to tell you. I need to get this guy to the doctor. Bayoshi said, his fur standing on end. He hated checkups, and ones in the middle of the night were no better. Why? Hinata asked as the Eevee started struggling in his owner's arms. Naruto can explain, Sasuke said simply. And stay still. He ordered, tightening his grip on his squirming Pokemon, keep it up and I'll put you in your Pokeball. That caused Bayoshi to settle down. Good boy, Sasuke said smugly, turning around and walking back to Dr. Duran's room, Bayoshi looking back at them over his shoulder with big eyes. Okay, Naruto said, watching them leave. Anyway, what did the nurse say about you? He asked, turning to Hinata. The girl muttered, trying to think of something. Just a nightmare, nothing important, Sakura said quickly. Eh? Naruto asked, tilting his head. But you said you couldn't wake her up. That doesn't sound normal. What did the doc say about that? She was just having a bad nightmare, Sakura insisted. Sometimes, you have a hard time walking up from one. Okay, you're the expert, Naruto said, backing away. No need to get aggressive. I was just asking. Thank you, Hinata whispered, smiling. Also, Naruto added slowly, looking somewhat bashful, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Both girls looked confused. I mean, he added, not sure how to explain, I'm really worried about Puck, and I wish I was with him right now, but I was worried about you too, Hinata. And, if Puck wasn't sick, I would have been with you, honest. Oh, blast it all, I'm not making any sense. Hinata felt herself turning bright red. We get it, Sakura said, smiling and squeezing Hinata's hand to bring her back to her senses. Naruto smiled, and Hinata silently thanked her. Anyway, can you finally tell us what happened to Puck? Sakura asked, yawning a bit. Naruto screwed up his eyes a bit. Where to start? 0000. The next morning, 6:50. Groaning, Sasuke rose from his bed stiffly. Stretching up and down, he turned to tell Naruto to get up, but stopped. The blonde wasn't in his bed. For a minute, Sasuke wondered where he could be, then he remembered that Naruto decided to stay with Puck for the night. Sighing, he got dressed and headed for the doctor's office. He needed to pick up Bayoshi anyway, so might as well check in on Naruto while he was at it. Sasuke went down a hall and rounded the corner, only to nearly bump into Sakura's blonde friend. What was her name again? Sasuke didn't care. Oh. The girl said, falling down on her rump in surprise. You frightened me. She held out her hand for him to help her up. Funny, Sasuke thought as he pulled the girl up quickly, I thought I didn't even bump into her, weird. He tried to pull his hand back, but the blonde held onto it for a second. So, what are you doing up so early? Ino asked, smiling big and twirling her finger in her hair. Going to get Naruto and Bayoshi, Sasuke grunted, walking past her. Much to his chagrin, the girl followed. Well, don't you want to know what I'm doing? Ino asked sweetly, batting her eyelashes. No, Sasuke answered bluntly. Well, Ino went on, I plan on catching a bus that leaves for Teal Town at 7:30. Sasuke stopped in his tracks and turned towards the blonde. There's a bus? Ino smiled devilishly. Of course there's one. I plan on taking it so I can catch the early bird bus to Winterborn City. How interesting, Sasuke mused, more to himself than Ino. Ino started, going off on something, but Sasuke wasn't really listening to what she was saying. Sasuke. A girl's voice, not belonging to the blonde, grabbed the boy's attention. He looked up to see Sakura. Sasuke, I thought you said you wanted to have breakfast by, she started, hands on her hips in a playful way. However, when Sakura spotted Ino, she suddenly turned angry. What's she doing with you? Sakura demanded in an accusing voice, pointing. None of your business, Ino began, but she stopped mid-sentence when Sasuke pushed her towards the pink-haired girl. We're leaving in 20 minutes, Sasuke said abruptly, walking towards Dr. Duran's office. You and Hinata pack up. I'll get Naruto. Ino will explain. And with that, he left the two girls, who started to argue and fight, over what, he did not know, or really care. 0000. Exclamation mark, Naruto squealed, hugging his forehead and jumping up and down with joy. Thank you, Doc. You're very welcome, Dr. Duran chuckled bashfully. But truth be told, I did barely anything. You saved Puck, Naruto insisted, looking at him with big eyes like the doctor was a hero. You're miracle worker. That's a bit of an exaggeration, the doctor said, holding up his hands for Naruto to stop. Anyway, on the subject of Puck's new move. New move? Naruto asked, tilting his head to the side, what do you mean? The move he learned from the TM injected into him, Duran explained. Surely, you must have realized that your Furret would have a new move when this was all over? Naruto blushed. Not really. Guess you could say I was too worried to really think about it. He smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Then it hit him. Dude, Puck's got a new move. The boy exclaimed, looking at his Furret gleefully. That is so awesome. What is it? Well, you see, the doc began, but Naruto quickly drowned him out. I bet it's a really powerful one. The blonde said, grinning greedily, what else would a bunch of crooks use on a Pokemon? Well, if I may. Is it Fire Blast? Naruto asked excitedly, as hopeful. I'd love it if it was Fire Blast. Or Blizzard. Blizzard would be nice, so would Thunder, now that I think about it. If you could just let me. I'd be happy with Flamethrower, Naruto admitted, scratching his chin, or Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. You know, Those really awesome attacks that they always use in high-power tournaments. Will you shut it? Dr. Duran finally shouted, throwing his clipboard down on the floor and stomping his foot. Naruto quieted down instantly. Well, Duran said, clearing his throat and picking up his clipboard. Where was I? Oh, yes, as I was saying, there is no way to know what move your furret knows. Huh? Naruto said indignantly, but, my Pokédex can tell me what moves my Pokémon uses. That's right, the doctor agreed, the Pokédex can identify any move your Pokémon uses or moves it should know for its experience level. But it can't tell you what moves it does know. Naruto looked confused, so Duran decided to just show him. Look, he said, pulling out his own Pokédex. Naruto cocked an eyebrow, he could tell the model was far more advanced than his. All Pokémon professors are given a special Pokédex that does a basic scan of a Pokémon's vitals, unusual traits, and other things that would be useful in a medical field. However, every dex can do this. The doc pointed the device at Puck and pressed a button. Coming to life, the Pokédex lit up and hummed for about a minute. Then it chimed in a pleasant, female voice, Pokémon species, furret. Age, late adolescence. Most probable moves known at current experience rank, quick attack, defense curl, furry swipes. See? Dr. Duran said, stowing his Pokédex back into his coat. It can only tell you what moves a Pokémon would know at its level naturally. It can't tell you anything about TMs or taught moves. Okay, Naruto said slowly, looking at his furret. So, how can I figure out what Puck's new move is? It should be a simple enough matter, Duran explained. You are headed to Teal Town, right? Don't be surprised that I know, he added, laughing at Naruto's look of shock. Every trainer that comes here is just passing though to Teal Town. Anyway, if you go to the Pokémon Center there, they'll have a device that can tell a trainer every move a Pokémon knows. Every city with a gym or other place trainers go to battle has one. League law requires it. Cool. Naruto smiled. That will make things way easier. Thanks, Doc. Suddenly, Sasuke burst into the room without knocking. Puck's okay, right? The dark boy asked, looking the furret over quickly. Yeah, but Naruto began, only for Sasuke to cut him off. Good. Listen, we're headed out in less than 20 minutes, gonna catch a bus to Teal Town. Go get ready. Sasuke then turned to the Pokemon doctor, ignoring Naruto's questions. So, I trust Bayoshi was okay? Oh yes, Duran said, perfectly fine. Nurse Jennifer took him to go get breakfast. Typical, Sasuke hissed dryly. Come on Naruto, let's go. Just a second, Duran chimed, going over to the examination table. He came back with a needle. Before you go, I want to give your furret a vitamin shot. Now, if you could just hold him down. However, as soon as Puck saw the needle, he screamed as loud as his little lungs would allow him. Puck! What's wrong with you? Naruto tried to calm him down, but the furret just jumped away and made a beeline for the door. Sasuke lunged for the beastly. Get back here, you crazy little. Wait! Dr. Duran shouted, but it was too late. Hissing, Puck whipped around and delivered a rapid succession of slashes to Sasuke's face. Gah! The boy rolled on the floor, clutching his face. The Pokémon then fled the office, crying freedom. Puck! Get back here right now, Naruto shouted, scrambling after the little monster. What was that? Sasuke gasped in pain, struggling to his feet. That would be a furry swipe's attack, Duran said. I tried to warn you. Furrets can be nasty when they're cornered. Why'd he flip out in the first place? Sasuke demanded. Well, the doctor explained, it seems your friend's furret has a fear of needles. I found out about that last night when I was trying to examine him. Nurse Jennifer had to hold the rascal down. It's probably because of the shot he got from Team Snake's TM. You couldn't tell us this before you got the Houndoom shot out, Sasuke shouted, still covering his now bleeding face. What kind of doctor are you? Let me get you some ointment for that, Duran said. 0000. 7:20, near the bus station. Hurry up, Sasuke shouted, running to the station, it's going to leave any second. We'd be going faster if you'd stop shouting. Naruto screamed back. The team had to skip breakfast in order to get everything packed, and Naruto had to waste about 5 minutes trying to catch Puck before he realized he could just return the furret to his Pokeball. Now, They had less than 10 minutes to buy their tickets and get on the bus. Okay, Sasuke said when they finally arrived, everyone check to make sure they have everything, and I'll get the tickets. You're such a gentleman, Sasuke, Ino whispered flirtatiously at the boy's retreating form. Shameless hussy, Sakura hissed, opening her backpack. Let's see, food, clothes, medical supplies. Oh no, Hinata shouted, dropping her bag. What is? Sakura asked, did we forget something? Hinata nodded. We forgot to wake up Kiba. Meanwhile, back at the Poke Center. What time is it? Snorting, Kiba suddenly bolted up in his bed. Oh no. The boy shouted, looking at the clock. I can't believe it. His winced, thinking about the huge mistake he made. I forgot to feed Akamaru breakfast. He whined, pulling his hair. Then the wild boy calmed down. I'll do it later, it won't kill him. Sighing, Kiba laid down and pulled the covers back over his head. I wonder if I can hang out with Hinata and her friends for a little while, he mused, drifting back to sleep. They seem like a cool bunch. And I can get Naruto back for kicking me in the head. Hee. We have to get back and get him, Hinata gasped, turning around and starting for the door. Hold your ponytas, Naruto said, grabbing the girl's arm, there's no time. We got his Pokenav number, so we can call him later, Sakura pointed out. Yeah, Naruto agreed. Besides, Sasuke doesn't want us getting any more tag-along. He says it's going to be hard enough catching Pokemon with the 4 of us. You mean 5, Ino added pointedly. No, he means 4, Sakura said darkly. You're not part of the team. Who said you get to decide? Ino retorted, facing Sakura. Before the two could actually get to arguing, Sasuke returned, tickets in hand. Come on, you guys, the bus is leaving. 0000. The team, and Ino, managed to jump on at the last minute, and found their seats. Now remember, everyone, the bus driver said to his passengers, this is a non-stop bus to Teal Town. I have a timetable, and I want to keep it. There is to be no roughhousing, no shouting, and no other disturbances on this bus. Driving this thing is dangerous, and I need to be concentrating on that, not on you. Also, keep your Pokemon either in their balls or, for those of you that let them roam free, he looked directly at Sakura and Sasuke, who were holding Water Lily and Bayoshi, respectively, your Pokemon are to be on your laps at all times. Don't put them down on the floor or a seat. If you need to go to the bathroom, have someone else hold them or return them to their Pokeballs. Break any of my rules, and I swear I'll kick you off this bus myself. Understand? Aside from some grumbling remarks by Naruto, everything was quiet. Good, the driver said. Now we can get going. As the bus headed off, Sasuke groaned silently. Hinata and Naruto were sitting in the seats ahead, while he was stuck in between Ino and Sakura. This was going to be a long trip. Sasuke, Ino whispered sweetly in his ear, I was thinking, don't you think it would be nice if I started traveling with you? Buzz of, you Viper, Sakura snapped, leave him alone. Who asked what you thought? Ino responded, I was talking to Sasuke, you big-eared snoop. My ears are perfect. Sakura retorted loudly. And I'll have you know. I thought I said no shouting on the bus. The driver called from the front, not taking his eyes off the road. Nice job, Billboard Brow, Ino whispered nastily. As the two girls continued to argue, Sasuke sank down in his seat. You know, he said glumly to Bayoshi, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Vav, the white Pokemon agreed, covering his ears with his paws. 30 minutes later. I spy, with my little eye. Naruto mused, looking around as the bus drove on, something, blue. Is it the sky? Hinata suggested. Darn, you're good, Naruto grunted. Okay, your turn. Sighing, Hinata looked around. They had been playing I Spy the entire way, and truth be told, she was getting tired of it. Naruto, not to be rude, but can we please stop for now? The blonde boy looked at her with questioning eyes. Something wrong? Hinata shook her head quickly. I don't mean it like that, Naruto. I just feel a little lightheaded and don't want to look at the road. Oh, Naruto said, nodding, okay. So, is there anything else you want to do? The girl sighed in relief. Well, I suppose you could tell me what the doctor said about Puck, Hinata suggested. They had been so rushed by Sasuke to get on the bus that Naruto hadn't been able to explain what happened with Puck. "Hey, you're right," he exclaimed. "You never got to hear the story." "Well," he began, launching into his story. From his seat, Sasuke quietly watched as Naruto and Hinata chatted. Well, more like Naruto talked and waved his arms expressively like an idiot while Hinata listened, smiling. Sakura and Ino had finally stopped arguing, and Ino had put in some ear plugs and went right to sleep. Meanwhile, Sakura occupied herself by feeding Water Lily. Smugly, Sasuke scratched behind Bayoshi's ear. Only a few more miles to go and they'd be at Teal Town, where he could earn his first gym badge. Things were going so smoothly, only an act of fate could bring them off course. And so, Naruto grinned, concluding his story. "The doc said he couldn't tell me what Puck's new move is. So I'm gonna take him to the Poke Center as soon as we get to Teal Town and find out what awesome attack he's got now." Naruto," Hinata said cautiously, "don't you think that you're being a bit rash, hoping that Puck learns a strong TM?" "What do you mean?" Naruto asked, tilting his head. "Why shouldn't I?" "Well, Hinata mused, trying to find the best word. "Couldn't it be possible for Puck to have learned something normal? I just don't want you to get your heart set on Puck learning a powerful attack and then be disappointed." "Oh, don't worry," Naruto replied, "I'll be happy with any technique he learns. In fact," he added, pulling out his Pokédex, "let's see what TMs a Furret can learn." The Pokédex dinged and displayed a list, reading it off. Furret, even compared to other normal Pokémon, are compatible with a wide variety of TMs and can learn attacks from every element. Some more notable examples are Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Iron Tail, Slash, Hyper Beam, Solar Beam, Shadow Ball. As Naruto oohed and awed as the list went on, Hinata started grimacing more and more. "Look at all the great techniques he can learn," Naruto whispered eagerly. "And Naruto," Hinata squeaked nervously, looking at the greedy look on his face almost fearfully, "I don't think you should be excited about this. I mean, I remember how sick Puck was when Team Snake." That's because they weren't real doctors," Naruto said nonchalantly, waving his hand. "I bet a real doc would be able to inject a TM harmlessly." Flash. Without warning, a Pokeball on Naruto's belt burst open in a flash of light, and his Furret was now running around the bus in a panic. "What that?" Though the flash of light from the ball opening caught the bus driver's attention, it was Hinata's scream of fear that caused him to rear off to the side of the road and come to a screeching halt that caused many of the passengers to fly out of their seats. Luckily, no other cars were around, otherwise there would have been a crash. "What's going on?" the driver shouted, turning around. He saw Naruto crawling around on the floor, chasing after his Pokemon frantically. "Hey!" the bus driver screamed, "I thought I said." Unfortunately, Sakura was one of the passengers ripped out of her seat, along with Water Lily, who responded to the sudden stop as any baby would. Soon, the passengers on the bus were panicking and screaming. "Sakura," Sasuke shouted above the din, "shut that thing up." Bayoshi had long since leapt off his lap in the chaos and was scrambling around the bus madly. "I'm trying." Sakura screamed back, cradling her baby carefully. "Puck, you idiot," Naruto bellowed, crawling in between a woman's legs after his wild Pokemon. Hinata was still in her seat, curled up and terrified, her head feeling like it was being split open by an unseen force. "All right everyone, calm down," the bus driver shouted, trying to raise his voice above everyone else's. However, no one seemed to hear him. "Hey," he shouted again, "I said, calm down." To emphasize his point, he stomped his foot down. AVV. Right on Bayoshi's tail. The driver gasped, jumping back in surprise as the Eevee started biting at his foot in vengeance. He tried kicking the Pokemon away. "Hey, stop the... Get away from him, you and Carrot Hash." The bus driver looked up just in time to see Sasuke's fist flying at his face. Amazingly, Ino slept through all of this. Much fighting later. Off the bus. The black-eyed driver shouted, literally throwing Naruto, Sakura, Hinata, and a very irate Sasuke, and their Pokemon, out of the bus. Off. 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 First Naruto and Puck. Oh oof. Then Sakura and Water Lily. Arg. Then Hinata, who was still holding her head. Gah. And finally, Sasuke and Bayoshi, who were both swearing and spitting. RRGG. Sasuke grunted as he landed on top of the heap. He got up and shook his fist at the bus as it drove away. Come back here and fight like a man. Bayashi hissed, looking mournfully at his poor tail. What even happened? Sakura asked loudly, trying to get Waterlily under control. Puck just jumped out of his ball and went bananas. Naruto explained. What's the big idea, Puck? He turned to scold his Pokemon, but the furret wasn't standing there anymore. Hey, where's Puck? The blonde looked around and spotted his Pokemon running away. Hey, get back here! He screamed, giving chase. Oh, just great, Sasuke growled. Come on, Bayashi. He and his Pokemon ran after the blonde buffoon. Come on, Hinata, Sakura said, let's Hinata? Sakura realized that the girl was clutching her head in pain. What's wrong? Grimacing, Hinata looked up. My head. Okay, Sakura said, just lady down. I'll get you an aspirin. Meanwhile, Puck ran across the hills like a rapidash. How could a Pokemon with such short legs run so fast? Sasuke thought in amazement. Puck, what are you doing? Naruto shouted, huffing and puffing as he ran. There's nothing to be afraid of. Fur. The Pokemon hissed back, not slowing down a bit. Hey! Enough of this, Sasuke shouted, taking out a Pokeball. Akodo, go! He tossed the ball so that it landed a few feet ahead of the furret, and his Shinx appeared in a flash. Puck found himself screeching to a halt, cut off. Ret? Leer him into submission, Sasuke ordered. Shinx, Akodo complied, eyes glowing red. As Sakura predicted, Akodo's slashed eye healed well, but even with the help of the Poke Center, it was still scarred. To Puck, however, this made his leer all the more intimidating. For it, Puck whined, whimpering as Akodo advanced on him. Flawless, Sasuke said smugly, turning to Naruto. Now, just take out his Pokeball and... What are you doing attacking my Pokemon? Naruto shouted, grabbing Sasuke by the front of his shirt. Call him off. Let go, you maniac, Sasuke hissed. Seeing his master being threatened, Akodo forgot about the furret and rushed over to save him. Which was all Puck needed to make a break for it. No, Sasuke shouted, pointing. He's getting away. Stop him. Akodo whipped around and rushed to obey, but Bayashi did, too. Both Pokemon crashed into Puck at the same time. Only for the furret to explode in a puff of smoke, causing the Bayashi and Akodo to hit each other instead. Shinx. The two started hissing and growling at each other in their confusion. What just happened? Naruto asked, dumbfounded. He pulled out his Pokédex. Substitute, it chimed. Using a portion of its energy, a Pokemon creates a semi-real clone of itself and disappears at the same time, moving to a nearby location. This clone can attack and act on its own, but is notably weaker than the original. Substitute? Naruto said, looking at Sasuke in confusion. But how did Puck learn that? Probably from the TM, dummy, his friend replied. And shouldn't you be asking where Puck is now, instead of just standing around? Eevee, Bayashi cried, wagging his tail tauntingly. Shinx. Akodo responded by biting down on his foot. Eevee. The two started brawling. Hey, knock it off, Sasuke ordered, stepping in between his two now fighting Pokemon. He pulled Akodo away and started scolding him for biting Bayashi, who was smugly smiling behind his owner's back. Naruto spotted his furret trying to slip away. Puck, stop it, he yelled, pulling out his Pokeball. However, before his trainer could try returning him, Puck stuck out his tongue and ran. No you don't, Sasuke said, tossing Akodo. Get him. Shinx, the electric type hissed, building up a charge as he flew at the furret. The Shinx landed on Puck, letting out a spark attack. But once again, it exploded in a puff of smoke. Again? Naruto said in exasperation. This subject seems to exhibit an unusual knack for the substitute technique, his Pokédex explained.